قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين.
One of the wonders of the way in which Allah has created the bee is that the queen bee lays her eggs in houses built by the workers in different sizes. The largest houses are prepared for future queens, and the eggs which are laid in these houses will become queens. The eggs which the queen lays in the smaller houses, which are 1/4 of an inch across, will become male bees. And the eggs that are laid in the small houses, which are 5 inches across, will become worker bees. It remains for us to note that the queen bee deposits 3 or 4 sperms with the worker eggs, so that the eggs will be fertilized and will become worker bees, while she lays unfertilized eggs in the houses of male bees. Another of the wonders of way in which Allah has created the bee, that it does not mate except in the air when it is flying. And there is a reason for this. The male bee cannot mate with the queen when she is sitting on the ground, because the male organs remain latent and invisible and can only emerge when it is soaring in the air. When air sacs that exists in the male bee fill with air, exerting pressure on the male member, which then emerges. One of the wonders of the way in which Allah has created the virgin queen bee is that she is able to call the male to mate with her by making sounds which attract the male. She comes out of her hive and hovers around it, using these sounds which are heard not only by the males in a hive, but in all the neighboring hives. So groups of males come out and follow the queen, who keeps flying fast in the huge space. And the strongest and the fastest male is the one who gets the mate with her. But he loses his life in the process, because after mating he loses his male organ, which stays in the queen, and this results in his bleeding to death. You may ask how the male hears the queen's call. The answer is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped all bees with sensory antennas consisting of connected rings, 12 in males and 11 in workers, and queens consisting a number of holes. The number of holes in the sensory antenna of the male is 2,800, in the worker it is 2,400, and in the queen it is 1,600. And the sensory antennas of bees work like a radio antenna. They are used to detect the sound made by the queen and other sounds. They are also used to smell, to hear, and to feel. If a bee, worker, male or queen, loses its antenna, it cannot fulfill its role, because most of its senses, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, and touch, are concentrated in the antenna, as we have just said. The formation of the male bee suits the role for which it has been created. It is large, it is strong, it eats a lot, and it does not do anything. It does not gather nectar, or make it, or build, or guard the hive, even if its food is placed in its mouth by workers. All that it is able to do is to fertilize the queen. And therefore, after it has played its role, the worker bees stop feeding it. They rather attack the male members and kill or expel them. And one notes that the number of males is small in relation to the total number of bees. There are no more than 200 males in a hive. The worker bees form the most number of them in the hive and are active elements in it. They are the ones that perform the various tasks and difficult missions. They are the ones that collect the nectar. They are the ones that gather the pollen, make the honey, prepare the queen's special food, build the honeycomb in which the honey is kept, raise the new generation of bees, guard the hive, keep it clean, maintain it, even ventilate and heat it. These various tasks in the hive are distributed as special tasks, and these specialized tasks are connected to the age of the bee. At every stage in the bee's life, there is a task which it does, and the longer a bee lives, the more tasks she does in turn. Thus, when a bee has completed her lifespan, she will have done all the tasks required for the upkeep of the hive. And one notes that the bee starts with easy tasks which do not require a great effort and ends with the most difficult task, which is going about in the fields to gather nectar and pollen and water, then making and storing the honey. We may also note that the tasks become progressively more difficult according to the characteristic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon the bee. Each task that the bee does is suited to the physical characteristic, enabling her to play the new role and do the new task. During the first 2 days of her life, the worker bee cleans the houses from which the newly hatched bees have emerged. She cleans these houses and prepares them for the next generation. The queen will not lay eggs in these houses until she has inspected them and found them to be perfectly clean. In fact, the discussion is so interesting that I feel we should rather stop here. And inshallah, in our next discussion, we will discuss the progressiveness of the various tasks of the bees in accordance to their age, concluding today with what we have discussed, and also acknowledging with conviction the absolute beauty and the absolute wonder in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The small insect, the honeybee. Subhanallah, what a beautiful creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And justly so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has even named a surah in the Quran Kareem as Suratun Nahl. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding and the capacity to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how rightly did Rasulullah say that do not ponder on Allah, but rather ponder on the creations of Allah, and you will understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين أن اعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون يغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى إن أجل الله إذا جاء لا يؤخر لو كنتم تعلمون